The announcement came on a regular Wednesday morning, delivered with the calm urgency that had characterized interstellar broadcasts since the signing of the Galactic Concord. Every human-made screen across the globe lit up with the message, a stark black background framing the white, crisp text, "Mandatory Alien Brides Program begins. All eligible humans must participate." At 27, Jane Ellison had expected many things to potentially disrupt her carefully planned life, but being mandated to marry an alien was not one of them. She stood in the middle of her modest living room in her New York apartment, a half-eaten slice of toast frozen halfway to her mouth, as the reality of the announcement sank in. The government had been negotiating with several alien species for years to maintain peace and access advanced technologies. It was public knowledge and generally accepted as a necessary if uncomfortable aspect of modern global politics. What wasn't expected was how these negotiations would suddenly impact the personal lives of Earth's citizens. The details of the program scrolled under the main announcement. All single individuals between the ages of 18 and 35 were required to register for a pairing at their nearest enrollment center. The objective, the message stated, was to foster better relations between humans and the various alien species that were part of the Galactic Concord. In exchange, the aliens would provide indispensable technology to help solve Earth's most pressing issues, like climate change, energy production, and disease eradication. Jane's phone began to buzz violently on the coffee table, snapping her out of her stunned silence. It was her best friend, Mark, whose face appeared fraught with confusion and concern when she answered. "Jane, are you seeing this?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, I'm watching it now," Jane replied, her voice a mix of bewilderment and resignation. "Looks like we don't have much choice in the matter. We need to meet up. The enrollment center downtown will get swamped by noon. Let's try to get there early and figure this out together." She agreed, finishing her toast with a mechanical, absent-minded chew. Dressing quickly, she chose an outfit that was comfortable yet presentable, not sure what to expect from the day ahead. The streets were more chaotic than usual, with throngs of people moving in a hurried flow, their expressions a mix of fear, curiosity, and defiance. News drones flew overhead, capturing the historic and bizarre turn of events, occasionally flashing updates about the growing lines at enrollment centers worldwide. Mark was waiting for Jane when she arrived, his usually unruly hair neatly combed back, a nervous attempt at appearing composed. They joined the line that had already wrapped around the block, the atmosphere thick with anxious chatter and speculative whispers. "Do you think we actually get to choose who we marry? Or is it like a lottery?" Jane asked, trying to ignore the tightening knot in her stomach. "I heard it might be some kind of matching system, based on compatibility or something. But who knows? Alien technology is involved, so it could be anything," Mark speculated, his gaze lost in the crowd. Hours passed slowly under the midday sun, the line inching forward at a snail's pace. Government officials managed the crowd, handing out water and registration forms that needed to be filled out before entering the enrollment center. The form was extensive, asking for detailed personal information, medical history, and even personal preferences in culture, hobbies, and life goals. Finally, as the sun began to dip below the city skyline, Jane and Mark reached the front of the line and entered the enrollment center. Inside, the chaos of outside seemed to mellow into an orderly procession. They were directed to separate booths where government workers, aided by sophisticated alien technology, would create their profiles. "Good luck, Jane," Mark said, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder before he disappeared behind the sliding door of his booth. Jane took a deep breath and stepped into her own booth, where a gentle voice greeted her, instructing her to sit in front of a complex-looking machine. As she settled in, sensors extended towards her, reading her vitals and scanning her form. "Please relax and answer the questions as truthfully as possible," the voice advised. "This will ensure the best possible match for you within the Galactic Concord." With a final deep breath, Jane nodded, ready to face whatever this new, unasked-for chapter of her life brought her way. The machine hummed to life, and the first question appeared on the screen in front of her, marking the real beginning of her journey into the unknown. Jane's booth was dimly lit by a soft blue glow emanating from the panels surrounding her. The screen in front of her flickered as the questions began, ranging from her dietary preferences to her thoughts on interstellar travel. It felt invasive yet necessary, a deep dive into her psyche that left no stone unturned. As the session progressed, the questions delved deeper, probing her thoughts on coexistence with non-human entities. Jane answered honestly, uncertain how her openness would be interpreted by whatever algorithm was assessing her. Outside the booth, Mark underwent a similar process. His screen displayed intricate patterns while a soothing voice asked him to describe his emotional reactions to various hypothetical scenarios. Despite the unsettling nature of the situation, he found himself intrigued by the complexity of the test, wondering about the technology that could tailor such personal questions. Meanwhile, the center buzzed with activity. Agents moved swiftly, coordinating the data from thousands of participants, their faces a mask of professionalism. The air was thick with a mix of advanced tech and human anxiety, a cocktail that seemed to define this new era. Once the questionnaire was complete, Jane was led to another area of the center for the compatibility scan. Here, the technology was even more advanced. A large, spherical device awaited her, pulsing with a quiet energy. She was instructed to step inside. The interior of the sphere was lined with sensors, and as the door sealed behind her, a gentle voice explained that the scan would map her emotional and cognitive patterns to find the best match among the alien candidates. The process was painless but disconcerting, as she felt the sensors align with her neural pathways, reading the very essence of her being. Back in Mark's area, he finished his tests and was directed to a waiting room. The room was filled with other participants, all lost in their own thoughts or in hushed conversations with their neighbors. Screens along the walls displayed soothing images of Earth's landscapes, perhaps an attempt to calm the crowd. After what seemed like an eternity, Jane emerged from the scanning sphere, feeling slightly dazed but otherwise unharmed. She joined Mark in the waiting room, her eyes scanning for his familiar face. "They really can see everything, can't they?" she whispered to him once they reunited. Mark nodded, his expression a mix of awe and discomfort. "Yeah, it's like they've downloaded our personalities," he replied. "Makes you wonder how deep they can dig." Their conversation was interrupted as screens in the room lit up with a new message. It was time for the next phase, the allocation ceremony. This was where they would finally learn who their alien partners would be. The participants were guided into a large auditorium, the air heavy with anticipation. On a massive screen at the front, names began to appear alongside alien species and home planets. The diversity was staggering: beings from watery worlds, creatures of air and light, and entities that defied human understanding of biology. Jane felt her heart race as the list scrolled down. When her name finally appeared, it was linked to a Lorathian, a species known for their peaceful philosophy and ethereal beauty. Beside her, Mark was paired with a Vrox, known for their strength and deep cultural heritage. As the allocations were announced, the reality of their situation set in. They were about to enter into unions that spanned galaxies, a mix of diplomacy and genuine social experiment. As the crowd began to disperse, Jane and Mark found themselves standing still, lost in the magnitude of the path that lay ahead. This was no longer just about survival or diplomacy, it was about finding a way to live and thrive with beings from another world. The implications were immense, not just for their personal lives but for humanity as a whole. And with the final names called, the center emptied, leaving Jane and Mark to ponder the vastness of the universe they were stepping into, alliances bound by marriage but forged in the hope of universal harmony. Under the vaulted ceilings of the Galactic Integration Facility, Jane and Mark joined the other participants, all grouped according to their alien matches. The environment was a blend of earthly and alien design, with translators embedded in every wall and ceiling, ensuring no language barrier hindered communication. The orientation was led by a team of both human and alien facilitators. A tall, slender figure, representing the Galactic Concord, stepped forward. Their skin shimmered with a subtle iridescence, reflecting the soft light of the chamber. "Welcome, esteemed participants," the figure began, their voice a soothing melody translated instantly into dozens of languages. You are pioneers in a bold new venture that will bridge the distances between our cultures and species. The room was filled with a palpable mix of curiosity and tension as the facilitators explained the next stages. Each human-alien pair would undergo a series of engagements designed to foster understanding and cooperation. These would include cultural exchanges, language lessons, and joint participation in various projects both on Earth and on the participants' respective alien partners' planets. Jane listened intently, her mind racing with both excitement and apprehension. The Lorathian she was matched with, named Elian, was yet to arrive, and she felt a nervous anticipation at meeting him. Mark, on the other hand, felt a robust curiosity about his Vrox partner, Sarn. Known for their formidable presence, the Vrox were giants compared to humans, their culture rich with traditions of honor and combat. As the orientation continued, various alien species began to filter into the room, their appearances as varied as the planets they came from. Some floated, others walked on multiple limbs, and a few even phased in and out of visibility, their forms adjusting to the earthly environment. Finally, the moment of introductions arrived. Jane's heart skipped a beat as Elian approached. He was ethereal, his movements graceful and fluid, his features delicate yet distinctly non-human. His eyes, large and luminous, regarded her with a gentle curiosity. "Jane Ellison," he said, his voice musical, the translator barely keeping up with his lilting accent. "I am honored to be your partner in this grand endeavor." Jane managed a smile, her nerves easing slightly. "Thank you, Elian. I look forward to learning more about you and your world." Meanwhile, Mark's introduction to Sarn was a stark contrast. The Vrox was towering, his body covered in scales that glinted like metal. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder, yet his eyes twinkled with kindness. "Mark Williams, I am pleased to meet you," Sarn boomed, extending a hand that was nearly the size of Mark's entire torso. "We shall learn much from each other." As the introductions concluded, the facilitators announced the beginning of the cultural exchange program. Jane and Mark, along with their new partners, were guided to various workshops and learning sessions. In one session, Jane and Elian engaged in a discussion about Earth's art, comparing it to Lorathian expressions of beauty. Elian showed her holographic images of Lorathian landscapes that seemed to breathe and shift subtly, their art deeply intertwined with their environment. Mark and Sarn attended a workshop on diplomacy and conflict resolution, a critical aspect given the Vrox's history of internal strife. They debated, learned, and even participated in a Vrox ritual that involved a physical display of strength and endurance, much to Mark's dismay. As the day drew to a close, Jane and Mark met back, their minds buzzing with new knowledge and a deeper understanding of the monumental task ahead. They were no longer just citizens of Earth but active participants in a vast interstellar dialogue. Their experiences over the coming weeks would challenge their perceptions and reshape their roles not just within their respective pairings but within the broader canvas of intergalactic relations. The weight of this responsibility was daunting, yet the potential for genuine connection and understanding was an exhilarating prospect. As the weeks unfolded, Jane found herself deeply immersed in the culture of the Lorathians. Elian introduced her to his world's intricate customs, which were steeped in a history that spanned millennia. The Lorathians valued harmony above all, their society structured around principles that promoted peace and artistic expression. Their music, unlike anything Jane had ever heard, used scales that didn't exist on Earth, creating melodies that seemed to echo through the very soul. In turn, Jane shared elements of human culture with Elian. She showed him classic films, explaining the nuances of human emotions and societal complexities captured in cinema. Elian was particularly fascinated by the concept of drama and conflict, elements less prevalent in Lorathian culture due to their empathic nature, which naturally diffused tensions. Meanwhile, Mark and Sarn tackled the more physical aspects of Vrox culture. Mark learned the art of Kreshtal, a martial practice that was part sport, part meditation, and part combat training. It was physically demanding, pushing him to the limits of his endurance, but it also taught him about the Vrox's respect for strength and resilience as pathways to understanding and honor. The Vrox had a rich tradition of storytelling, which they used as a means to pass down wisdom and history. Sarn shared these stories with Mark, who was captivated by the epic tales of battles and alliances, each story a complex weave of moral lessons and historical facts. Mark reciprocated by introducing Sarn to human history through books and documentaries, highlighting the human capacity for both conflict and incredible cooperation. The integration process was rigorous and not without its challenges. Cultural misunderstandings were inevitable. Jane once offended Elyan by casually dismissing a piece of Lorathian artwork that she didn't understand, mistaking its subtlety for simplicity. The incident led to a profound discussion about the ways Lorathians perceive the universe through a lens of interconnectedness, an idea that was both alien and enlightening to Jane. Similarly, Mark found himself at odds with Sarn when he questioned the Vrox's historical narratives that seemed to glorify war. This led to a tense moment where Sarn explained that their history was not about glorification but about learning from past mistakes and honoring those who sacrificed for the greater good. It was a perspective shift for Mark, who had to reconcile these views with his own preconceptions about what constituted moral history. Through these exchanges, Jane and Mark not only learned about their partners' cultures but also about the complexities of their own. They began to see their world through a broader lens, appreciating the diversity of life and intelligence in the universe. As the program neared its next phase, which would involve visits to their partners' home planets, both Jane and Mark felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They were no longer just participants in an exchange program but were becoming ambassadors in their own right, representing humanity in a context far wider than they had ever imagined. Their training also included learning the basics of interstellar travel, from the physics of space warp drives to the etiquette required when boarding alien vessels. Elyan and Sarn, in their roles as both partners and mentors, prepared them for the environmental and societal adjustments they would need to face. As the day of departure approached, Jane and Mark met to discuss their upcoming journeys. They shared their hopes and fears, aware that they were about to step into roles that might change the trajectory of human-alien relations forever. The weight of this responsibility was palpable, but so was the sense of wonder and potential for genuine connection across the stars. The day of departure arrived with a sense of grandeur and solemnity. The spaceport was bustling with activity, with representatives from various Earth governments and the Galactic Concord in attendance. The air was filled with a mix of languages and the hum of alien technology, creating an atmosphere of a pivotal moment in history. Jane and Mark, along with other human participants, were clad in specially designed suits that would help them adapt to the environmental conditions of their destinations. Jane's suit was sleek and light, designed to regulate her body temperature and atmosphere intake, a necessity for the ethereal environment of Lorith. Mark's, on the other hand, was sturdier, equipped with enhancements to support the heavy gravity and atmospheric pressures of Vrox. As they approached the interstellar vessels, the scale of the technology involved became strikingly apparent. The ships were colossal, their designs as varied as the species that operated them. Jane's vessel, bound for Lorith, resembled a gleaming silver leaf, its surfaces smooth and almost liquid in appearance. Mark's ship was more rugged, with a dark metallic exterior and angular lines, reflecting the Vrox's utilitarian aesthetic. Inside the ships, the interiors were tailored to accommodate both human and alien needs. Jane's craft was filled with soft lights and open spaces, mimicking the Lorathian preference for harmony and fluidity. Mark's was compartmentalized and fortified, indicative of the Vrox's strategic and protective nature. As the vessels prepared to launch, Jane found herself standing next to Elyan, who seemed perfectly at ease despite the monumental nature of the event. His calmness helped settle her own nerves, and she took a deep breath as the countdown began. Mark and Sarn were reviewing last-minute details about the voyage, their discussions a mixture of technical jargon and mutual reassurances. Despite his initial apprehensions about traveling to a war-torn planet, Mark felt a growing respect and camaraderie with Sarn. With a sudden and smooth acceleration, the ships lifted off, leaving Earth's atmosphere with an ease that belied the powerful forces at play. Jane watched through the viewport as Earth receded into the distance, her heart filled with a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. The journey through space was unlike anything Jane or Mark had ever experienced. The absence of traditional day and night cycles, the sight of distant stars and galaxies, and the constant hum of the ship were disorienting yet exhilarating. Elyon took Jane to the observation deck, where the vastness of space stretched out before them. He explained the different celestial phenomena they observed, each explanation accompanied by anecdotes of Lorathian explorers who had charted these regions centuries ago. Meanwhile, Sarn shared with Mark the strategic importance of various star systems they passed, detailing historic battles and alliances that had shaped the current political landscape of the galaxy. As they neared their respective destinations, the reality of what awaited them began to sink in. Jane would soon walk on Lorith, among beings whose way of life was profoundly different yet strangely appealing. Mark faced the challenge of entering a society where strength and honor were paramount, a stark contrast to the more diplomatic and commercial environment he was used to. Their arrival was imminent, and as each ship entered the orbit of its destination, Jane and Mark prepared to step onto another world, their roles as ambassadors about to be tested. They would need to rely on everything they had learned, not just about their partners' cultures, but also about themselves and their capacity to bridge worlds. As Jane's vessel descended into the atmosphere of Lorith, the sky outside transformed into a kaleidoscope of colors she had never seen on Earth. The clouds swirled in hues of violet and soft green, casting an otherworldly glow inside the cabin. Elyon stood beside her, watching her reactions with a gentle smile. The aurora of Lorith is caused by the interaction of our planet's magnetic field with the solar wind, Elyon explained. It's a constant reminder of our planet's dynamic nature. Jane was mesmerized, her eyes fixed on the spectacle. The approach was smooth, the ship gliding towards a landing pad that was part of a larger complex, which Elyon identified as the Harmonic Convergence Center, a hub for interstellar diplomacy and cultural exchange on Lorith. The architecture of the complex was a reflection of Lorathian values, with flowing lines and structures that seemed to grow out of the landscape itself. The buildings were interconnected with pathways covered in lush, local flora, creating a seamless blend between nature and construction. Upon disembarking, Jane was greeted by a delegation of Lorathians, each extending a hand in a gesture of welcome. Their touch was light, almost ethereal, much like their presence. The greeting ceremony was brief yet filled with expressions of gratitude and hope. Meanwhile, Mark's arrival on Vrox was starkly different. The ship landed in a fortified compound, surrounded by towering walls and guarded by armed sentries. The air was thick, the gravity stronger than Earth's, pressing down on him with a relentless force. Sarn guided him through the disembarkation process, which included a series of security checks. The Vroxian greeting was a clasp of arms, a sign of strength and respect among warriors. The compound of unity, Sarn explained as they walked through massive gates, is where our leaders and foreign dignitaries meet. It's built to withstand any threat, a testament to Vroxian resilience. The compound was indeed a fortress, but inside, the halls were adorned with artifacts of Vrox history, each piece telling a story of battles fought and alliances formed. It was a museum of their martial heritage, a heritage that Sarn was eager to share with Mark. As Jane and Mark settled into their new environments, they each began a more personal journey of understanding their host's ways of life. Jane attended gatherings where music and art were used not just for entertainment but as forms of communication and diplomacy. She learned to appreciate the subtleties of Lorathian expressions, which relied heavily on nonverbal cues and the harmonics of their language. Elyon introduced her to the concept of thought harmony, a practice where Lorathians attuned their mental frequencies to one another to create a symphony of collective consciousness. Participating in these sessions, Jane felt a profound connection not only with Elyon but with the Lorathian community, a sensation that transcended the spoken word. In contrast, Mark's lessons on Vrox focused on the tactical and strategic aspects of their society. He participated in combat training sessions, learning how to maneuver in the heavy gravity, which enhanced both his strength and resilience. Sarn taught him the importance of strategy and foresight, skills that were revered in Vroxian society. The evenings were spent in discussion with Sarn, where they explored the philosophies underpinning Vroxian culture. Through these conversations, Mark gained a deep respect for their emphasis on honor and collective security, values that he saw as different yet parallel to certain human principles. As they immersed themselves in these alien cultures, both Jane and Mark not only adapted but also began to influence their hosts. Jane's human perspective brought fresh insights into Lorathian discussions, sometimes challenging their conventions in ways that were both constructive and enlightening. Similarly, Mark's ability to question and probe the Vroxian narratives led to debates that, while intense, fostered a greater understanding between the two. Their stay was not just an exercise in diplomacy, but a mutual exchange of ideas and values, each side learning from the other, expanding their worldviews in the process. This exchange was shaping them, just as they were shaping the relationships between their worlds. As weeks turned into months, Jane's understanding of Lorathian society deepened. Her daily interactions weren't just educational, they were transformative. The Lorathians' approach to conflict resolution, which emphasized emotional resonance and empathy over adversarial debate, challenged her own earthbound notions of negotiation and power dynamics. Elyon, ever patient and insightful, facilitated her integration into these complex social fabrics. One evening, under the luminescent skies that never truly darkened, Jane participated in a Lorathian ceremony that celebrated the planet's long history of peace. Here, she contributed a piece of earth music adapted to Lorathian instruments, creating a fusion that captivated her audience. This gesture earned her deep respect and furthered her acceptance into their community. Back on Vrox, Mark faced different kinds of challenges. The Vroxian respect for strength and endurance was not just cultural but also a practical necessity in their harsh world. Mark's physical abilities were tested, but so were his intellectual and strategic capacities. He learned to play Vrock, a complex board game that mirrored the tactical decisions one might make in battle, which was central to Vroxian education. During a significant gathering of Vroxian clans, Mark was invited to speak about human strategies in historical conflicts. His detailed analysis of Earth's peacekeeping missions post-World War II provided a fresh perspective to the Vroxians, who were considering a unified defense strategy against potential threats. Sarn, watching Mark's growing confidence and understanding, planned a visit to a border colony, a place where Vroxian strength was not just idealized but essential for survival. Here, Mark witnessed the real stakes of Vroxian society, where vigilance and strength could mean the difference between life and death. This experience solidified his bond with Sarn and gave him a visceral understanding of the Vroxian way of life. Meanwhile, Jane's bond with Elyon grew in more personal realms. They shared many moments exploring the philosophical underpinnings of Lorathian society, discussing concepts of individuality versus collective well-being. Jane introduced Elyon to Earth's rich diversity of cultures, highlighting the beauty and chaos of human individualism. Elyon, in turn, showed Jane the Lorathian archives, a vast collection of historical records that illustrated how their societal structures had evolved. These discussions were not without their difficulties. The challenge of aligning such different worldviews was daunting. Yet, it was through these very challenges that Jane and Elyon found a deeper connection, one that went beyond diplomatic relations to something more profound and mutually enriching. In Vrox, as Mark returned from the border colony, he and Sarn debriefed the Vroxian High Council about their findings and experiences. Mark's insights from a human perspective were particularly valuable, helping to shape the Council's approach to external threats. His role had grown from observer to advisor, a shift that marked a significant achievement in his diplomatic career. As their missions progressed, both Jane and Mark faced the realities of their situations. They were not just participants in an interstellar exchange but pivotal figures in the unfolding narrative of human-alien relations. Their actions, decisions, and even personal growth were becoming threads in a larger tapestry, one that would depict the future of humanity's place among the stars. This responsibility was immense, but so were the opportunities to foster lasting peace and understanding across galaxies. Both knew that the coming months would bring even greater challenges, but they were now equipped with the knowledge, relationships, and insight to face them. Their experiences on Lorith and Vrox were not merely assignments but pivotal chapters in their lives, shaping not only their destinies but potentially the future of all interconnected civilizations. As their time on their respective planets drew to a close, Jane and Mark prepared for the concluding ceremonies that would officially end their integration missions. These events were designed not only as formalities but as celebrations of the progress each had made in bridging human and alien cultures. Jane, on Lorith, was deeply involved in planning a grand exhibition that would showcase the collaborative projects between Earth and Lorith. The exhibition included art, music, and technology displays, illustrating the fusion of human creativity with Lorathian elegance and insight. Elyon, who had become not only a mentor but a close friend, worked alongside her, ensuring that the event accurately reflected their shared experiences and hopes. One of the highlights was a virtual reality experience that allowed visitors to see Earth through Lorathian eyes and vice versa, providing an immersive understanding of each other's worlds. Jane watched with pride as Lorathians and fellow humans alike explored the exhibit, their expressions one of wonder and appreciation. Meanwhile, on Vrox, Mark was part of a summit where leaders from various Vroxian clans gathered to discuss new defense strategies influenced by his contributions. Sarn presented their collaborative work, emphasizing the integration of human strategic insights with Vroxian strength. The summit was not only about military matters but also about how such strategies could be used to maintain peace across Vroxian territories. During the summit, Mark was given the rare honor of partaking in the Vroxian war ritual, a ceremony that symbolized strength and unity. Clad in traditional Vroxian armor, Mark stood beside Sarn, feeling the weight of the armor and the gravity of the moment, a symbol of his journey and the trust he had earned. Back on Lorith, as the exhibition neared its end, Jane and Elyon took to the stage. They spoke about their journey, avoiding the term directly but encapsulating its essence, highlighting the mutual understanding and respect they had cultivated. The crowd listened intently, moved by the palpable bond that had formed not just between two individuals but between two worlds. On Vrox, after the rituals and discussions, a feast was held in the Great Hall of Unity, where Mark joined the warriors in their traditional meals and songs. The atmosphere was jubilant, with robust laughter and the clinking of glasses filled with Vroxian brew, a potent symbol of their acceptance of Mark into their community. As the ceremonies concluded, Jane and Mark communicated via a live link, sharing their experiences and the outcomes of their efforts. They spoke about the challenges and the unexpected lessons learned, their faces alight with a sense of accomplishment and a touch of sadness at the impending farewells. Jane returned to Earth with Elyon as part of a reciprocal visit, while Mark extended his stay to oversee the implementation of some of the strategies developed during the summit. Their goodbyes were heartfelt, with promises of continued cooperation and visits. Upon returning, Jane and Mark debriefed with Earth's Global Alliance, providing detailed reports and advocating for ongoing and expanded engagement programs based on their successes. Their stories and results fueled discussions at the highest levels, influencing future policies on interstellar relations. Their experiences had reshaped their own lives profoundly. They had started as envoys in an unprecedented program and emerged as key figures in the evolving narrative of human interaction with the galaxy. Their personal growth, the bonds formed, and the intercultural dialogues they facilitated marked the beginning of a new era, one of open skies and shared stars. The convergence of their missions marked not just a successful end but a promising beginning to future collaborations. Humanity's place in the cosmos had shifted, ever so slightly but significantly, towards a more integrated and understanding existence amongst the stars.